Hello, it's time. It's great to be with you all again. This is one of the episodes where Dr. Jen and I are tag teaming again. But this is a topic that is near and dear to both our hearts. So we wanted just to record this so that you could have it as, bookmark it, because it's a topic that when we talk so much about thrival and longevity, one of the things that we all kind of are starting to wrestle with is how do we keep our cognitive abilities and capabilities intact? And specifically, how do we either fight or prevent the erosion or occurrence of dementia? And so this is an episode of, and we're, it helps us all kind of keep it in a framework as we go through the top X list. This is going to be a top 10 list of things that we can do that are actionable, science-backed things that we can do, even if we're in our 50s or 60s or 70s, to slow, reverse, and prevent the impact or emergence of dementia. And I'm going to say dementia and kind of keep it in the dementia terminology specifically, since we hear Alzheimer's a lot, and Alzheimer's is kind of the brand name disease that we are most familiar with. But there are many types of cognitive decline, and they all fall in the dementia category. So we think of dementia as the umbrella category, and then Alzheimer's as a type of dementia. I think it's about 60 or 70% of the cases of quote unquote dementia are Alzheimer's cases. And then there are other cases as well, but we'll talk about it more specifically about dementia. And then one of the reasons why we're bringing this up is because there's been a lot of science that's getting awareness now that says, hey, dementia maybe started in our 30s. And you're like, well, what? Like, I can't do anything about that now. A lot of us look at what's happening with maybe our parents and we think, okay, I'm going to get in front of this. I want to try to impact this. And then you hear that, well, maybe it started in your 30s. And so we wanted to take some time to go, hey, that's maybe all true. And there are still levers to pull that will slow or reverse the effects of dementia. And this episode is really to get explicit in recording those levers so that when you're thinking about this, when you can go back to and go, what was it that I was trying to spend time on that would help impact this issue, which is a core issue around thrival, the idea of being able to kind of keep your mental faculties, your wits about you in those extended decades and years. The top 10, this is going to be kind of a checklist format, and we'll put it in our show notes again. The top 10, think of this as dementia prevention habits that are accessible to us as midlife women. One is, not a surprise, this is Dr. Jen and I, always our number one. Movement is medicine. Moving your body daily. The science says between 150 and 300, now it's 300 minutes a week to move your body. So, if you think about that in 30-minute segments, the first is like, oh, okay, 5 30-minute segments or 10. And so in a 7-day week, if you take a day off, trying to get 10 segments in the 6 days means you're going to be spending a little more time, an hour plus on some of those days. So just calendar it in. It's good for your bones, good for your muscles, and most importantly, good for your brain and your mindset within that brain. So moving your body, number one, and remembering that strength training is 3 days a week of that moving the body, and then the cardio and the stretching, the balance, things that are helping in that whole health perspective around movement fall into those 300 minutes. So that's number one. Number two, and this is Dr. Jen's, favorite and always expertise that she brings to us, is the sleep. So protecting your deep sleep. The goal is 7 to 9 hours, but deep sleep as part of the 7 to 9 hours means you're getting to bed earlier than you think sometimes. So a lot of us might think we're wired to be night owls, or we have teenagers at this period in life. But the idea here is to remember to get to bed before midnight, because no matter what your chronotype is, your night owl versus early bird, you do have to get that sleep before midnight to get your deep sleep numbers. So number two, protect your deep sleep and protect your sleep overall. Consistent sleep schedule, dark, cool bedroom, eye masks and white noise we talk a lot about. And then some kind of a way to check in on the sleep apnea if it's creeping into your sleep hygiene. It matters because the deep sleep is what clears the brain toxins and the brain plaque, which is what people are tracking in Alzheimer's and dementia. Move your body and deep sleep. Number three, stabilizing your blood sugar. So we hit this a lot with our nourishment metrics, but the idea of stabilizing your glucose spikes and kind of stabilizing the blood sugar level versus the up and downs we might be getting from reacting to insulin insensitivity or spikes in glucose from different kinds of food choices. The idea here is to stabilize your blood sugar as much as possible because often Alzheimer's is linked to this kind of type 3 diabetes, which will be seen in the glucose and blood sugar instability. If you can think about the tactical, what does that mean? It doesn't just mean don't have any brownies. Of course, we're going to have some desserts and things like that in our life, but it's more make sure you've got protein and fiber whenever you're eating. You try to balance whatever carbohydrates and sugars and things that are a part of that carbohydrate mix with protein and fibers when you're eating. Try that walking after meals. It's just 10 minutes right after a meal. And I think a lot of cultures, and even, in our culture, we did this years ago when there wasn't a sit around and watch Netflix option. People just got outside and walked. And so the 10 minutes after you eat to move, it could be a walk, it could be burpees. I mean, those are always a little bit of a challenge for me to do no matter when, especially after a big meal, but just something that gets you moving for 10 minutes after you eat, blunts your glucose spike, helps you metabolize the food, and helps you on your overall caloric burn from that meal. So that's a way to stabilize the blood sugar. And then, of course, the reminder of course, I feel like anybody who's listening and having this conversation with us already knows about ultra processed foods and trying to reduce those. But here's a reminder in case you need to share it with somebody in your life. The fourth thing, so we did, movement, sleep, and nourishment are big levers on every area of life, but specifically for dementia reduction. The fourth one was new news to me. So this maybe is something that you hadn't already seen the science on, or if you had, it's relatively new. And that is to really think about vaccinations as a support for brain health. So the study that just came out, we'll link to it in our show notes, but it was a very broad study around the impact of shingles and the shingles vaccine in decreasing the risk of dementia. So I think a lot of us hear about doing the shingles vaccine. I have done it. It is a time suck. What I mean by that is, I was offline for a good 24 hours, if not 36 hours. So you need to plan it in your schedule. It's a 2-dose regime. So you take 1 dose and then I need to double check my notes, but I think it's within about 3 months, you need to take the second dose. And both of those I had a very strong reaction to, even though I had chickenpox as a kid. So the shingles vaccine, my grandmother had shingles and I remember the effect it had on her. That in and of itself was a reason for me to get the shingles vaccine. I mean, it was so painful. And she was, she's a warrior, but she was in her late 70s, early 80s. I mean, it was horrible. So I just didn't want to get shingles. And then now that I've read this research, I feel a little bit of hope that it's one of those things you can do and you get the benefit of it reducing your risk of dementia. So that's the vaccines that would help for brain health. The annual flu vaccine also has been connected to reducing dementia, and then the pneumonia vaccine if you're eligible for it. Studies show these 3 vaccines, mostly in the shingles vaccine, it's a 20 to 50% risk in dementia. That's one to kind of check into. The fifth thing, and I think Dr. Jen and I have mentioned this on some of our earlier podcasts, but it's worth repeating, is the relationship between your hearing and your hearing loss to dementia. Your hearing, as you start to lose hearing, in your 40s and 50s, start to get tested. But as you start to lose hearing, the faster you get hearing aids, the better. I mean, luckily, we're so all used to wearing AirPods or things in our ears now, so there's not quite the same maybe visual stigma as there was for prior generations. But the faster you get hearing aids in your head, the better for managing dementia. And it's kind of an obvious reason in that if you stop hearing, you stop connecting, you stop processing information, but it is a direct relationship between the onset of dementia and the onset of hearing loss that has not been mitigated with hearing aids. So no vanity, get there, get the hearing test done and start wearing those hearing aids. I'm 56 right now. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be wearing those within the next 10 years, if not sooner. So they're going to look cool, whatever way I do them. Okay, so that is number 5. Number 6 is the hormone therapy. So hormone therapy we talk about for a lot of reasons in the health span component of longevity. But specifically for dementia, think about it as estrogen protecting your brain metabolism and reducing inflammation in your brain. So estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, all 3 are kind of our secret sauce hormones, but estrogen specifically is a big protector of your brain health and reducing inflammation. So in the absence of it, we want to try to mitigate that absence by hormone therapy. And if you're not a candidate for hormone therapy, and by the way, that pool of people gets smaller and smaller as the research gets publicized more broadly. But if you're not a candidate for estrogen therapy, there are other over the counter adaptogens and even some pharmaceutical solutions that can help mitigate this risk of reduced estrogen and help in the brain protective effects of the hormone that estrogen normally provides. You can impact that with other tools. So just be explicit with your doctor that you're looking for brain cognitive protective effects that estrogen naturally would provide before menopause. That is number 6. Number 7, this one is also one of those great ones, which is like, yeah, I was already thinking about that, but now I get to check the box for, dementia prevention. And that is building your muscle. And specifically, I'm sitting here, my legs crossed, specifically your leg strength. So, we always talk about, like, if you only have an hour a day workout, if you only have 10 minutes to work out, what do I do? And it's legs, do your leg strength exercises. So we go, work out, do your strength, do your legs. Why? Your squats, your lunges, to just get up and down in your chair. The reason being that having strong legs, interestingly, actually predicts brain health a decade later. So, the reason why is, I'm sure, because there's so much muscle tissue in your legs. So having more muscle tissue connects to having better brain health. And your legs are one of the most efficient optimizing for space places in your body to focus on building your muscle tissue. So leg strength, brain health, they go together. Get the squats on and get up and down out of your chair. Okay, so that's number 7. Number 8 is thinking about tools that help you just reduce that thing we hear about. I feel like it's one of these, like, overall subjective things. What does this mean? But it's inflammation. Okay, inflammation, chronic inflammation. So how do you think about getting rid of chronic inflammation? Well, some of the practical things are like flossing your teeth, going to your dentist regularly and cleaning your teeth and flossing your teeth reduces your overall inflammation, not just your gum inflammation, but your teeth are a leading indicator about your internal inflammatory system. So get to your dentist, not just for that annual checkup, get there for cleanings and then be doing your daily flossing. I used to be like, I don't want to deal with bringing one of those little like string things, but there's so many portable flossing tools now. I'm kind of bummed because there's plastic, it's the environment, but just stick them in a pocket, have them in your car, floss at least twice a day. The other ways to reduce inflammation, we talk about the different diet ideas, but the olive oil and the high protein and the seeds are great ways to reduce inflammation with your clean carbs and your green vegetables. And then another kind of tactical thing that you might think about, especially based on where you live, is getting an air filter. Bring an air filter into your home environment. Think about how to kind of make sure you're cleaning the air based on whatever pollutants you can't really control. That's another way to help think about reducing inflammation. That's a tactical, practical thing, is the air filter in your home. Inflammation is a direct connector to, potentially driver of, dementia. Anything to dial it down helps as a preventative measure. And then the last two, these are more the softer ones, which we've talked about in prior episodes around happiness and longevity or habits. And that is number 1, the social connection, staying social, staying connected, continuing your learning. So the weekly time with your groups, all the things that sometimes you have to justify on your calendar that fall into the fun bucket, but are actually great for you. Your hikes, your walks with your friends, your activities, your pickleball, your golf, your painting class, your writing class, all of those things are staying connected and keeping you learning. And it matters because social connections build your cognitive reserve. Just the idea of the neural network of having the relationship and the connectivity within different communities is a neural pathway that you're building, and that is a blunter of the dementia risk and the cognitive erosion. And then the last one, having a sense of purpose and meaning, which seems straightforward and obvious, but I think really is one of the harder things as we continue to move through life. We're not in survival mode as often as we were maybe in our 20s or 30s, whether that survival mode was financial survival, or maybe it was parental survival, having children and families, or maybe it was taking care of our parents' survival. But there are things in our earlier decades which really trigger and fire on purpose in an unspoken, inexplicit way. Like, it just, you naturally get purpose with this set of activities. Like, you have to pay your bills, that's a purpose. You got to take care of another human, that's a purpose. Later in life, it might feel a little squishy. What is that purpose? And so being intentional about articulating a purpose and giving credibility and meaning to your activities in that purpose vector is also an important blunter of dementia and dementia risk. So those are kind of the top 10 explicit ways to think about the science telling us how to spend our time to help mitigate the risk of dementia. And I think the idea of living longer and living better longer is hard to decouple from the idea of having a healthy brain and cognitive strength. And so we'll keep revisiting these tools and practical ways to implement them. But the invitation is to save this episode and come back and check it out for when you need a reminder of whatever you're trying to make space for in your calendar and connecting it to your long-term brain health and the explicit prevention of dementia. Okay, that's one of our quick ones. Dr. Jen and I will look forward to talking with you together again soon. Until then, take care and play with one of these top 10s. Thank you so much for spending your time with us here today. If you liked what you heard and you got some tips on how to live better right now and for the long haul, please help us reach more midlife women. Please share and rate and like this show. And we can't wait to continue the dialogue with you on our next episode. Until then, thank you. It's time.